Afternoon. It's me, Sandy Shellis, and I'm coming to you live to talk about some actually interesting things. An article, it's from 2017, and I really liked it. It's actually quite a long read, but it kind of it's interesting to me because at the same time that I'm reading this and I'm reading about collapse of our civilization, my body's collapsing. I found out the other day that my spine literally is collapsing. And it was disconcerting and upsetting because, as it is, I'm a mess. And I had that neck surgery a year ago, which the doctor finally said actually is what's keeping my neck from completely going, but it moved just enough that it brought back all the symptoms and all the pain. And I do wear a neck brace. I do wear a back brace because my lower back is bad. I mean, I'm pretty messed up. So as I'm collapsing, so is civilization. So I guess I'm not alone. And I think a lot of us are doing the same thing. A lot of us have physical problems, and it is what we're grappling with. So I'm also testing a new modem also today. Finally got the new modem. Here it is, and it only took a month of going through all kinds of bullshit, and it was just awful. But I'm going to get started with this article. It's called The Collapse of Global Civilization Has Begun. And I'm using my iPad, so that might be in the way a little bit, but it'll help me. It helps me easier because I don't have to crick my neck. And hi, Marcia. Hi, Natural Progressive. Hi, Poodle. Susan, who's going to come on with me when I get my shit together. She is. And we're going to talk about some different things. Susan is. So let me start this because it's quite long, and I may not read the whole thing. Let me show you just a really quick picture of me. My normal me, not my sitting here me, my me if I go out in the backyard and even want to plant a pot of flowers. There she is. That's me. Back brace, neck brace, headset, and that's me in the backyard to do anything. I just thought it would be interesting to show you the things you don't really know, right? There I am. Isn't that just wonderful? That's my uniform, but I'm getting rid of it. So let's go. Here we go. Ready? The collapse of global civilization has begun. Only the fewest today think that global civilization is on the brink of collapse, but it's doubtful that the Romans, the Greeks, the Mayans, or the Mesopotamians saw their own fall coming either. We hear about the new obstacles on a daily basis. Most of the news consists of disturbing stories on increasingly overwhelming issues that, plainly spoken, seem impossible to solve. Hi, Forest Dweller. Love from the Netherlands, he says. Yep, to you too. Okay, and yet no one even recognizes that it is collapse that starts to unfold all around us and all inside us too. I have to keep a good attitude, actually, guys. You know why? Because I'm not a victim. I say this all the time. Shit happens to everybody. I'm not the only one. I just have to deal with it. I have to deal with it. I have a lot of pain and I have to deal with it. But this is the way it goes. All right. Civilizations are characterized by the emergence and expansion of cities. As the Latin root of the word suggests, civis equals inhabitant of a city. That, in some instances, turns into states. A city is a permanent settlement of humans where more humans live than the immediate environment can support. So maybe I just have more weight than my spine, which is the environment can support. I'm sorry, I have to do this. If I don't laugh and make jokes, I can't get through this shit. I have the medical matrix all the time. Okay, so therefore the city requires the import of food and other resources from the surrounding area. The use of the term require hereby implies that if the rural population doesn't agree on exporting the product of their work, the city comes and forcefully takes it. The city continuously expands as its population grows, requiring even uh, uh, more resources from the rural surrounding and therefore depleting an ever increasing radius of land. We see that happening all the time, right? Civilizations can, by definition, not be sustainable, since every expansion on a finite planet logically has a limit. And colonizing other planets is obviously nothing if not science fiction. Earlier civilizations reached this limit after a few hundred or 1,000 years. But with the advancement of technology, we repeatedly found loopholes that allow us to artificially modify conditions in our favor. As we slowly reach the limit of technical, physical, and biological possibilities to further expand as a civilization, it is of utmost importance to understand what is happening and why. And I'm sure a lot of us here do, but it's good to go over it, especially a good article. If we can learn one thing about of the past collapses of major civilizations, it is that all of those showed some, if not most, of the following symptoms during or immediately before their imminent collapse: environmental destruction, depletion of vital resources such as water, arable soil and timber, famine, overpopulation, social and political unrest, inequality, invasion of or other forms of devastating warfare, and disease. What are we seeing today? No, what are we seeing today? We're seeing a lot. So think for a second. I guess you'll be able to come up with a current example for each of the points listed above in under a minute. If not, here are a few. Now, I've been live 7 minutes, so let's get going. Environmental destruction. Virtually every environmental crisis ever recognized as such in the last century has since worsened. All goals set by the Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro in 1992, its follow-up Rio Plus 20 in 2012, the Kyoto Protocol 1997, the Copenhagen Agreement COP15 2009, and the Paris Agreement 2016 have failed to make a considerable difference. And then, of course, we have our lovely IPCC reports. At the latter event, politicians agreed that climate breakdown must be mitigated, and half-hearted promises were made to set utopian goals for a reduction in CO2 emissions. No matter what you look at, maybe it's deforestation, atmospheric carbon levels, species extinction, polluted rivers, every aspect has gotten worse year after year. Governments don't seem to be able to solve the crisis, and neither is the public. Recently, the Global Carbon Project announced that despite all the efforts and the fact that overall carbon emissions from fossil fuels and industry have experienced only flat growth over the last 2 years, a sign of hope for many, the carbon emissions will once again grow by 2% in 2017, and the trend is expected to continue next year. It seems like all our efforts are destined to fail. Well, it's 2 years later from this article, isn't it? Forests all over the world continue to be destroyed in the name of economic growth, progress, and development. And we civilized humans set in motion what some call the sixth mass extinction event. In the past 40 years, we lost half of the world's wildlife, and species extinctions proceed at an unprecedented rate. Estimated at 10,000 species per year, or about one species an hour. Simultaneously, the decrease of insect populations across Europe by over 70%, already bearing the label Insectageddon, is believed to have a disastrous impact on human crops and ecosystem stability in the coming decade. We logged over 75% of all forests in the 10,000-year history of our culture. And logging continues at breathtaking speed. Currently, deforestation proceeds at a rate of 48 football fields per minute, while the concomitantly lose 30 football fields of topsoil per minute. I'm going to put this article, a link to this article, because, and you don't have to move around. Ugh, God, I wish I could just be comfortable. All right, pollution and extreme weather events. The CO2 concentration in the atmosphere has skyrocketed to now it was 400 parts per million in 2017. We all know that it's what, 415, 420 parts per million now in 2 years? The highest in over 800,000 years. And the emissions from today will stay there for another century. Despite extensive lobbying, it is now known that the biggest 15 ships produce as much pollution as all the cars in the world. Military, anybody? Oh, and the tourism industry, too. We can't forget that. They burn the dirtiest of all fuels and have to pay surprisingly low taxes for it. But nothing that we do pumps carbon dioxide into the atmosphere faster than air travel, is what I say. That let out contrails, which are capitalism trails, because they are a byproduct of capitalism polluting us, and I call them cap trails. But nothing that we do pumps carbon, okay, the travel. Yet new airports are built and existing ones extended, and the number of airplanes in the sky on any day continues to rise. The world's hunger for oil and the company's increasing demands to difficulty to meet the demands by conventional means have created over 1 trillion liters of highly toxic sludge from tar sand processing in Canada. These ponds cover an area of over 220 kilometers times 2, as big as 73 Central Parks. But those are not the only extremely hazardous black lakes out there. A giant lake filled with thick black sludge in China was recently dubbed the worst place in the world. It is a result of our worrying dependency on smartphones. In Inner Mongolia, the rare earth minerals needed to build them are processed, and the vast amounts of biohazardous and radioactive waste is discharged arbitrarily into the landscape right next to the factories. Maybe 2 years has made a difference. I don't know, I doubt it. Even if the industry would disappear tomorrow, their carcinogenic waste would stay with us for centuries, polluting skies, rivers, and soil. Microplastics are found not only in the oceans, but in alarming quantities in most tap water around the world. They even made it into the atmosphere, making it literally impossible to escape the plastic particles small enough to enter the cells of your body, where their toxicity increases the chance of cancer and other diseases. All these problems will, due to climate breakdown, only get worse in the future. Positive feedback systems lead to unstoppable changes on the surface of the planet. Rapidly melting ice caps, mixed with increased air pollution, leaves a dark layer of dirt on the surface, enhancing further warming and melting of the ice. Forest fires all around the world contribute to an ever hotter climate, which in turn leads to even bigger, more devastating forest fires. And we've seen them last 2 years. And now Alaska's burning over 700,000, maybe 800,000 acres by now. Jim Massa, who does Science Talk with Jim Massa, he's out of Alaska. And Jim was ready to be evacuated from his home because the fires were 20 miles from him. And he wrote a comment about how he had everything packed, his dog, and the hardest part was going to be through getting his cat into the thing. But as of yesterday, he was still at his home. And man, I think about him because he's really nice and I love his work. He's like a science teacher, and when I watch his videos, it's like being in science class. Okay, so Petteri Talas, Secretary of the World Meteorological Organization in 2017, said The past 3 years have all been in the top 3 years in terms of temperature records. This is part of a long-term warming trend. We have witnessed extraordinary weather, including temperatures topping 50 C in Asia, record-breaking hurricanes in rapid succession in the Caribbean and Atlantic, reaching as far as Ireland, devastating monsoon flooding affecting many millions of people, and a relentless drought in East Africa. Now, what have we seen in the last 2 years? A whole lot more. Sea levels have already risen considerably, and even the most pessimistic forecasts have proven to be true. In his documentary, An Inconvenient Truth, Al Gore claimed that sea level rise will flood the 9/11 memorial, at that time ridiculed, but it actually happened during Hurricane Sandy. Hurricanes increase in intensity every year, leaving behind post-apocalyptic landscapes like seen in the Dominican Republic and Hurricane Maria. Now we're going to talk about resources such as oil, phosphorus, antimony, indium, silver, copper, sand, and others long have peaked. Hence, officials do what they can to ensure the public that everything is all right and no problems are ahead. It would cost them their jobs and render their occupation superfluous. Superfluous, if they said the truth. The only official numbers on how much oil remains are presented annually by, you guessed it, BP. BP. Not very convincing. Those numbers are presented in confusing fashion since BP's calculations are based on current consumption levels. But guess what? Consumption's increasing. And despite so-called renewable energies having a small share of the overall energy created, our world still relies on, fossil fuels. It's not going to change anytime soon. And has it much in 2 years? If you do the same calculation with the average growth rate in oil consumption, you will end up at a date somewhat 15 years earlier, 2052. Now, like again, things have changed. 2 years. And remember, this is only if all discovered oil fields can be successfully exploited, whether they are under the Arctic ice shield or in the Ecuadorian Amazon rainforest. Furthermore, that is supposed to be the day where we arrive at 0 barrels of crude oil. Or this is supposed to be the day. So scarcity will start much sooner. For years, they have been pushing back the date of when exactly the world will run out of oil because they can constantly seem to find new reserves. Even if that might be the case, it is worth noting that those newly discovered oil fields are in the most inaccessible places. Anwar. Since all the fields that are easily exploited are almost empty. These new oil reserves require increasingly dangerous, expensive, and destructive technology. Offshore drilling, fracking, and the extraction of oil from tar sands. And fracking is the one that really gets to me because we have worked so hard to keep it out of New York and keep it out of where I live. And I live right on the Marcellus Shale, and they'll frack the living shit out of my county if it happens. And we will be ruined, and our groundwater will be destroyed. So when I put this article up, you can look at these graphs because they're awesome. And hi, Orla. Hi, Donald. Hi, everybody. Hi, Basil. Hi, Forrest. Hi, Jimmy. Everybody. Okay. War over resources are supposed to increase. And it is even the most basic resources that inspire conflict. With the Tibetan glaciers melting, China, India, and all other countries around the Mekong Delta could expect serious shortages in a few years. In China alone, over 28,000 rivers have dried up. Wow. According to the Ministry of Water Resources, ministry, anything I hear that says ministry, it just sounded so ominous, right? All in all, an estimated 2 billion people are in danger. Many experts say that wars were fought over land before, but nowadays, wars are fought over energy, and soon there will be wars fought over water. Says Lobsang Sangay, the head of the Tibetan administration, who's in exile, or was in exile then, and I don't know where he is now. Famine, something that hasn't come to the United States, but we've seen the breadbasket, right? And we know, and we've heard Nicholas Humphrey talk all about what's going on there. And hi, Jeffrey Pearson. Oh, good. This is so cool. I wasn't planning, I didn't plan this, but I needed to feel better. At a time where even pro-business and pro-development Forbes magazine writes that capitalism will starve humanity until 2050 unless it changes, whatever that means, but this big change is yet to come. It should be clear that we're very close to total collapse of the global food supply. In the article, the only problem addressed is overfishing of the oceans. Not even ongoing acidification or pollution is included, not to mention plastic, not to mention beaching whales, not to mention all of this horrible stuff. A sophisticated simulation called Food Chain Reaction was built by experts of the State Department, the World Bank, and the multinational agribusiness giant Cargill, along with other independent researchers and scientists, specialists. It involved the participation of 65 officials from countries all over the world, as well as key multilateral and intergovernmental institutions. By 2024, the scenario saw global food prices spike as much as 395% due to prolonged crop failures in key food basket regions, driven largely by climate change, oil price spikes, and confused responses from the international community. The importance of this simulation lays in the fact that it was created partly by powerful organizations who would lie to the public, but not to themselves, as if it was the case with big oil publicly denying climate breakdown, but internally preparing for its effects. They might tell the public that we have another 40 years or so worth of oil in the ground, but they themselves know that 2024 would be a much closer call for either scenario. Now, remember, this was written before the new IPCC conservative report. Now, he says, remember, all those factors examined here are interrelated. No oil means consequently no food in the supermarkets. You can imagine what would happen. So start saving your heirloom seeds like we do. According to reports by a government contractor, the U.S. national security industry already plans for the impact of an unprecedented global food crisis lasting as long as a decade. Overpopulation. Here we go. The world is, in contrast, what humanists and futurists might say, vastly overpopulated. Their error is to think that the planet is empty and just waiting to be filled. Oh, something happened. What? Wait, I don't know what happened. I'm just going to keep reading it. I don't know what happened. This error is to think that the planet is empty. That means we have exceeded the carrying capacity of this planet by several billion people. There is no such way. You know, something happened here. I gotta change this here. Something happened and it says this. Okay, I don't know what happened. That the stream quality was shitty. Of course, it's a new modem, so I am trying it out. And we'll find out on Friday night, too, when we do a Facebook Live with 4 people. See how my new modem works. All right, so let's get back to overpopulation because it's quite a big thing. And I got to do something for a second. Whoops. Boy, I'm really doing great today. All right. More than half the population of the world lives in cities. In some cases, in apartments so small that they are called coffin homes. The numbers are staggering. They're staggering. The built world that sustains us is so vast that for every pound of an average person's bodies, there are 30 tons of infrastructure. Roads, houses, sidewalks, utility grids. Let's see what else. Intensely farmed soil, and so forth, says Jedediah Purdy, author of After Nature, A Politics for the Anthropocene. You know, I'm surprised I haven't read that one. Okay. I haven't read it. Without this enormous construct to sustain our current population levels, we would fall back somewhere between 10 and 200 million. If anything would happen to any part of the infrastructure listed above, the consequences would be severe. When we talk about overpopulation, we also have to include the fact that domestic animals for use outweigh wild terrestrial mammals by a factor of 25 to 1. Civilized humans come with a lot of luggage. Social and political unrest. Saying that society falling apart is no longer an exaggeration. Every day there are huge protests and clashes with police all over the world. Now that's 2 years ago. Now laws are being enacted to arrest everybody that protests, at least pipelines in the United States. The public is divided into ever more fractions that are unable to come to any compromise. Whether left or right, conservative or liberal, pro or anti-gun, refugee, abortion, vaccines, or climate change, the two opposing fractions are doing nothing but hardening their own hearts against the other side. They are trapped in echo chambers on social media that only confirm what they already believe to know, and therefore intensifies their conviction of their own righteousness. This year alone, in 2017, there were over 50,000 recorded incidents of gun violence in the United States. 307 were mass shootings. Radical groups, sometimes militarized, are on the rise all over the planet. Whether patriot groups in the US, FARC in Colombia, pirates at the coast of Somalia, ISIS in the Philippines, Boko Haram in Nigeria, or underground right-wing terror cells in Europe, everyone seems to prepare for some final war. Terminology once viewed almost exclusively in positive terms encounters more and more skepticism as big tech tightens its grips around our personal lives. A large number of people in the developed world is seriously addicted to smartphones. Maybe I am, but only because I have this. Am I in denial? No wonder, since they are in turn specifically designed to make us addicted. More studies emerge every week showing the huge downside of advanced technology that most of us so far have simply overlooked. The effects of our highly technological society on our children are spine-chilling, and its consequences even more. Managers, CEOs, bankers, politicians, and other members of the upper class systematically avoid paying taxes, therefore robbing the public of money that is desperately needed in communities. The leak of millions of documents, called the Panama and Paradise Papers, show the sheer scale of this peerless fraud. A global plutocracy has reached unimaginable power. Oligopolies, oligarchies, control the economy, politics, and society. Dystopia is here. On an international level, democracy doesn't seem to work anymore. With the emergence of more and more authoritarian leaders like Trump, Putin, Erdogan, Duterte, Orban, Chinocha, and Bolsonaro in Brazil now, the world slowly is shifting towards an uncertain future. Politics has always been a dirty business, but in the digital age, it gets increasingly hard for politicians to hide their wrongdoings and corruption. Without portable cameras in everyone's pocket and all information being stored online, it is impossible to hide things as long as governments used to do back in the old days. No, I don't know what happened here. Wait a second. I can't see. Hang on a second. Why would this happen? Okay. Some strange ass stuff happens with my computer. I don't know why. All right. How many times have we witnessed? Oh, wait, let me go back. Okay. As long as governments used to do it, until everyone involved was beyond the reach of persecution, retired, or dead. So that was talking about, what governments did. How many times have we witnessed governments change from liberal to conservative and to liberal again, all ruled for by people who really believe that this election will finally set things straight? It is unbelievable to me that people still fall for this. Economic collapse is imminent, not only because of all the bubbles yet to burst, like the debt bubble, the student loan bubble, the tech bubble, or the giant real estate bubble that caused China's double digit growth and led to vast, half finished ghost towns for millions of inhabitants. China used more cement in 3 years than the US in the entire 20th century for these projects, which in turn is one of the reasons why the world is running out of sand, but simply because economic growth is reaching its absolute limit. We are trapped in a dilemma. We collectively decided that we need economic growth. Yet economic growth destroys the planet and continues to deprive us of the last freedoms and resources. There is no logical approach to solving this fundamental crisis that undermines even the most basic assumptions about ourselves and e- and our place in the world. If our economy is not growing anymore, what else is there to do? If after all the cumulative effort, the contraption we've built will collapse in on itself anyway, what's the point? Good question. Now they go on to inequality and they go on to warfare, and we've been here for half an hour, and I'm going to go inequality. We know there's a lot of inequality, the many other gaps between men and women, black and white, east and west, and then warfare, of course, with erratic Donald Trump as president of the United States and Putin, who wants to keep up with the United States renewal of their nuclear arsenal. A nuclear arms race has once again started. That was already called a Cold War, right? We don't have to go into this whole thing. He just says the infamous doomsday clock is again at 2.5 minutes to midnight, the closest since 1953. The Islamic State of Iraq and Syria might have been defeated on the ground, but the ideas and the hate will sure stay, inspiring new jihadi movements to sprout up. In a vicious cycle of violence, terrorist attacks in the West are answered with bombing campaigns, which in turn fuel the propaganda of radical Islam. Warfare itself changes too. There's a tendency towards automation, drones, right? And digital warfare is an increasingly real threat. Then he talks about drones. Then the next one goes down to disease. Public health isn't increasing either. And pollution might be the number one reason. Pollution now kills more people than smoking, hunger, natural disasters, war, murder, AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria together. While we continue to destroy nature, this very act unleashes more disease. With the advancement of globalization and despite popular opinion, global health continues to decline. The nutritional value of our food is at a historic low. Vital phytonutrients have virtually disappeared from our daily meals. Industrial sugar in almost every processed food poisons generations, and biodiversity declines as a direct result of conventional agriculture. We as a society are overfed but undernourished. For the first time in human history, there are now more over than underweight people in the world, which I am working on, and I'm doing really good, by the way. It's not because Western countries are cleaner. It's because they simply export their own pollution. Talking about the air in New Delhi, and air pollution and garbage and plastic. So I'm not going to go on with that. He talks about antibiotic resistant superbugs, which will kill millions in the next decades. And don't forget the stuff that's coming out of the permafrost, right? Everyone, this is how collapse it looks. This is what it looks like. It may take years or even decades. We don't know. But we have already set it in motion. We are at the beginning of a gradual downward spiral that accelerates as it spins into the abyss. Watch it slowly unfold over the next few years and make better plans for what you do. Because many members of the upper class elites who know and understand the world on a global level are already making emergency plans for the growing cataclysm. So this guy talks, he talks about Theodore Kaczynski, Paul Kingsnorth, Derek Jensen, Edward Abbey, John Zerzan, uh, Thomas Malthus. There's a whole lot of stuff that he talks about. Our globalized society shows not only some, but all of the factors that led to the collapse of past civilizations. And through the use of advanced technology, we've been able to create conditions worse than any other civilization has ever had to endure. Some might think, well, if technology has brought us so far, it will sure bring us further. And they might even be right, but only for the next few years. It is obvious that the techno industrial system can't continue to try to fix occurring issues forever. There are simply not enough resources left. Like the Roman Empire, when it began to decline, we're in a period of overshoot that will inevitably be followed by collapse. Time is running out. Now, there's a whole lot more. He's talking about free energy. He's talking about solar panels, which are made from sand, which is running out. The production of photovoltaic plates for solar panels, which requires tremendous amounts of energy. There's so much more in this article. I'm not going to read it, but I'm going to put the rest of it up. I thought it was great, even though it was from 2017. And I'm kind of surprised that I didn't read it back then. So you guys have to read the rest of it for yourself. Okay. Let's see if I can get to the end, because it's really a very long article. Let's see what he says at the end. He talks about primitive people. He talks about, he says, don't get me wrong, I'm not proposing to go back to the Stone Age, which of course is physically impossible, nor do I want to become a hunter-gatherer. But there is a lot we can learn from Aboriginal people and indigenous people, because they have the most important knowledge of all, the knowledge we lack. They know how to live without devastating their environment, on which we depend on for our very survival. So, like I said, there's a lot more, but he says he's looked for answers, and he found many of them by simplifying every possible aspect of his life, spending plenty of time in the garden, inspecting and observing plants and animals, what I do every day, and looking to the indigenous people in whose area I now live if I have any further questions. Not to imitate them, but to understand them and learn from them. And it works! Since I quit civilized life 4 years ago, I became stronger and healthier than ever before, and have more freedom and free time, eat better, use much less money, worry less, and am generally more happy and content. Sometimes you have to take a step backward to move forward. That was a good article, and I'm definitely going to put the link up. And let me see if I can. And by the way, that picture on the bottom left is the cover picture from this article. And let me say hello real quick, because I don't really want to go on too long. Hi, Kim. Oh, gosh. Kim Centino's with us. She broke her shoulder. And I'm going to be setting up a GoFundMe to help her. She needs help. I just haven't had a chance to do it, but she's my buddy from Washington State. And I hope when I set it up, if you can see to it in your heart, she has a broken shoulder, a disabled sister. They have a big dog to walk, and they need some help. And I really love Kim. Mike Harrington. Let's see. Storm 2 south of Louisiana predicted to be a category 1 to 2 by the weekend. NWS warnings that storm surges of the Mississippi River might overwhelm the levees in New Orleans. And we've had so much rain here. I can't believe we've had 4 consecutive days of no rain. I mean, that's pretty cool. Forest Dweller says forest destruction under Bolsonaro has doubled. This week, a policeman was caught in Brazil. He's figured out that with the heavily polarized and deeply divided social political climate in the U.S., that no matter who wins the next election, nothing on climate change can be done. And Forest Dweller has a channel, by the way, and he just filmed a badger. He films all these little critters, and he's saving them. He's wonderful. I love the guy. I don't even know him. I don't know what he looks like, but just by his videos and the work he does, even his comments, it's okay. I don't know why my stream quality keeps getting lower, but keep saying that. I don't know why. This new modem's supposed to be a super duper thing, but all right, guys. Food, water, shelter. Forest dweller says, what have I been saying for the last 10 years, Sandy? Who is sustainable? Hunter gatherers, right? Hunter gatherers. So we end with me putting my normal self back on. For those of you who didn't see me in the beginning, I was talking about the fact that I am pretty messed up. And as the world is collapsing, so is my spine. It's not really funny, but okay, I'm here with you guys and y'all know me. I've got problems, but I'm going to continue as long as I can. As long as my long-term disability company doesn't harass me, because I am one messed up chick. And I can make myself look good, and I can sit for an hour and I can do this with you guys because I really love all of you. And when people say that social media is so shitty, for me, it isn't. And even though I don't know all of you, but I know this guy, Warren L. Warren, Ground Zero. He's in Ground Zero, which is Florida. Yeah. And Donald's here too. So, hi, Donald. Donald is, he's a good follower. All of you are. I want to thank you. Okay. I do have to go, but I wanted to do this and I wanted to do a shout out. We're going to do our live. It's going to be Jennifer, me, Nicholas, and Antonio on Friday night, but it's going to be on Facebook Live. And then we'll put it here on YouTube. It is the maiden voyage of my new modem with 4 people on at once. So we'll see how it goes. Hopefully we get a better connection than a lot of times. And I'll see you then. In the meantime, thank you all, really all of you. And don't forget Kim. And don't forget all of these wonderful people. Jim Massa, Science Talk with Jim up in Alaska. He is completely being affected by this horrible stuff that's going on up there. You know, not only warm temperatures, but fire. And I'll put a link to his channel because I like the dude. All right. The Voodoos is here, and let's see, Tinkerbell and Alaric and Maggie's here. Hi, Maggie May. Maggie says, yep. So that you got to plug. I got to plug her channel, The Natural Progressive, who I'm on with on Wednesday nights, but I'm not sure. I'm going to try to get home tonight. I have to go, where else? To a doctor's appointment. I freaking spend my life in the medical matrix. I just do. Emmanuel Lawrence, Kim, who else? There's a lot of people here. And I'm really thrilled. I love you guys. Thanks for coming. Peace. Honestly, it was a good article. I'll put it up. Have a good day.